So peaceful. Hey guys, welcome back to ESO, Bag here, and I just wanted to go over today my tanking build. Now obviously you see on the right there we have finally been introduced to text chat among our PC brethren who have had it since, the beginning, because they're on PC. We now have it, and interestingly enough, you don't need a Sony plug-in to the controller keyboard thing. They actually weren't jerks about it, and I just plugged in my regular keyboard with a USB right into my PlayStation, and it just started working without any fooling or recognizing or device changing option bullshit. So we are into text chat now, so that's what you'll see on the side there. Especially handy for this. This is the Undaunted Enclave, if you don't know, and the daily dungeon quests here are really hard to get into if you don't have text chat, because people stand around and you type and talk over each other. And I like the whole chat thing because I have met a lot of really interesting people with text, with voice chat, but text chat works so much better in certain situations. So we have that. That's awesome. We also got costume painting. So you see I'm wearing one of my costumes. I won't tell you which one it is. I'll let you try and guess. But for the reason behind this video was not to talk about changes in Shadows of the Hist. The reason for this video is to go over my skills as a Dragonknight. Now I've got a lot of skills on here that I don't use, or skills that I put points into. I'm not refunding them because it's like 6,000 gold and I just don't have it in my inventory right now. But the point is, we're going to go over the abilities that I use on both of my bars for tanking, and then we will go over some attributes and things like that. So the first one, and probably the most important one that you want to pick up, is Hardened Armor. And I have morphed that from Spiked Armor to Hardened Armor. The Volatile Armor is the other morph. It releases spikes in all directions, doing a bit of area damage. I find that having... when you use it, you get a damage shield equal to 10% of your max health for 3 seconds. It just gives you a little bit of a buffer when you have to reactivate it in combat. And I think that was a better option for my playstyle. So I went with Hardened Armor. You want to have this up at all times. As soon as it runs out, you want to bring it back up. Because as you can see, it's going to increase your physical and spell resistance. And you also get healed for more when you have a Draconic power ability active. And we'll talk about that in just a moment when we get to the passive lines in these trees. The next one I took is Heroic Slash. I haven't been using it too often. I've been playing with it, and I really like it. So that's why it's not maxed out like my Hardened Armor is. What it's going to do is reduce their movement speed by 60% for 12 seconds, but also it inflicts the enemy with minor maim, reducing their damage done by 15% for 12 seconds. You gain minor heroism, granting you one ultimate every 1.5 seconds per 9 seconds. So that's the morph. The morph was into Heroic Strike. It's called Low Slash normally. I don't remember what the other morph is, but Heroic Strike gave me more ultimate. And the more that I can blow my Warhorn or use my Dragonknight standard, the more I can do that in combat, the better. So I took a little bit of an extra ultimate regeneration. The next ability is your tank ability. You'll see down there it has a roll, sword, and shield. You do 2,048 physical damage and taunt the enemy to attack you for 15 seconds. Also afflicts with major fracture, reducing their physical resistance by 5,120 for 12 seconds. So you do more damage. Everybody does more damage to that enemy. When you see a cracked health bar, you'll know that your ability, your maim, your fracture is on the enemy. Your fracture, anyway, with a cracked health bar. When you use this, the enemy health bar will turn shadowy and black, like a black shadowy effect behind it. That's how you know that those buffs are active. Some bosses, some enemies are immune to the fracture, others to the taunt, so you just have to look for the status effect on the bar. Absorb Magic is what I took to pull trash mobs in dungeons and things like that. I've been experimenting with it. You'll see I haven't used it too much. I did morph it. The morph is into Absorb Magic, where it's going to give me the next spell projectile cast at me is going to heal me for 14% of my max health. So the higher my max health, the more I'm going to be healed for. It's going to absorb damage from the next spell projectile. So this doesn't work against AoEs or, I think, ground-based attacks that come towards you, but it does work against projectiles. So it's a nice ability to have. Plus, while it's slotted, you can block an increased 8% damage, and the cost of stamina for blocking is reduced by 8%. The next ability I took is Shielded Assault. That's maxed out. You rush an enemy, ram them for 1865 physical damage, stun them for 2 seconds. Obviously, it doesn't stun bosses or elites, but it does stun... Somebody just gave me a buff. Does stun trash mobs, and also I morphed it. It's Shield Charge normally. I have morphed it into Shielded Assault to gain a damage shield, absorbing 4,244 damage for 6 seconds. The reason I took that is just battlefield mobility. Being able to, if an enemy gets on another player of mine, I want to be able to get to that enemy, knock them down, stun them, get them off my ally as soon as possible, and the stun just give me an extra few seconds to taunt them. So I took the damage shield for charging. Standard of Might is the morph of Dragonknight standard that I took. Called down a flaming battle standard, deals 975 flame damage to each enemy nearby, and afflicts them with major defile, reduces the effectiveness of healing on them by 30%. Not a big deal in dungeons, nice if you have a healer you can't quite get to, but not super over useful in dungeons. What is useful is the standard increases my damage by 20% and reduces damage dealt to me by 20% while I'm standing in the radius of it. While the standard's up, an ally can activate Shackle to deal 6,863 flame damage and immobilize enemies in range. So it no longer gives you a blocking cost reduce, but it does reduce the damage dealt to you by 20%. So that has changed since, I think, was it last patch or the patch before that? I can't remember. But they did change that one up a little bit from what it used to be. So that's my first bar. We'll move into the secondary bar now. My secondary bar is more for trash mobs. That bar was more for bosses, low slash and things like that. I don't usually use on mobs like trash pulls unless there's like an elite, then I'll use it on the elite. But usually for trash mobs, for just cleaning up big groups of enemies, I use this. I pull out my two-handed sword. I'm gonna go with this. The first ability I took is Choking Towns. I used to have this on my main bar, but I decided it was easier to have it on my secondary bar. You're gonna immobilize enemies for 1401 physical damage. And it also inflicts them with minor maim, reducing their damage by 15% per 7 seconds. So the immobilization is for 4 seconds, but the damage reduction lasts for an additional 3 seconds after that. While enemies are held, allies can activate Impale, that's the synergy, to deal 2,535 magic damage, and that affects every enemy held by the talons. You have to do it while the enemies are held, though, otherwise it's not going to work. So that damage reduction is obviously great. You can stack damage reductions, so the amount of damage you're taking is not very much. Brawler, I took the morph of Cleave is Brawler. SWAT enemies in front of you. That's all enemies in a cone in 7 meters out to the sides and to the front. Deal physical damage, cause them to bleed for additional damage. But also I took Brawler because it gives you a damage shield. It absorbs 873 damage for 8 seconds. Each enemy hit increases the damage shield's strength by 100%. So you have a mob of 6 enemies, 6 trash mobs, and you hit them with that. You're getting a good physical shield. So that helps you do AoE damage, bleed damage, and get a shield on trash mobs, and that's why I use it for big groups. The next one I took, just because I didn't know what else to take, I took Venomous Claw. Just another dot that I can add if I'm DPSing or tanking, and I just want to put a dot on a boss or something like that. I'll switch over, put a bleed and a Venomous Claw. They're going to rake, deal poison damage, and then an additional lots of poison damage over 10.5 seconds, damage increasing by 12% every 2 seconds. So it's great. It does a lot of dot if you don't cure it off or heal it off or anything like that. The argument could be made for the other one, however I took this one partially because of the stamina, because I will get into that stuff later, but I have stamina, I have stamina for days. Noxious Breath I took just as another flame AoE. It's going to do damage and poison damage, and it also reduces the enemy's physical resistance by 5120, so my allies do more damage, and my attacks do more damage as well after a Noxious Breath. Took it because of the stamina, turned it into a stamina ability with the morph, same with this one, rather than Magicka. Rally, focus my strength to gain major brutality. It's going to increase my weapon damage and also heal me for 362 health every 2 seconds, an additional 559 health when it expires. The final heal is increased in proportion to the length of time Rally has been active. So the longer you have it up, obviously, if you let it run out, it's going to heal you for more, but you can activate it to heal yourself for that expiration heal, and also it automatically reuses it. So you don't have to tap it once to get it off and heal, and then tap it again to put it back on. When you tap it, it heals you and puts it back on. The ultimate that I have right now, just because I was leveling it up, I was going to give somebody a Werewolf Bite, is Werewolf. We'll get in. I'll show you what ultimate I would usually use on here. Let's see. It is right here. Sturdy Horn. So I don't remember what it's. I think it's called Warhorn, and then I transformed it into Sturdy Horn because it gives physical resistance and spell resistance. So you use a lot of this stuff, and some of it does stack. You can't stack 2 abilities on each other. Like you can't use a spiked armor and a magma shield or anything like that. That doesn't stack your physical resistance that high. But what it's going to do is increase my max Magicka health and stamina for me and all my allies by 10%, and also give us spell resistance and physical resistance. This takes pressure off my healer. This gives me an AoE to buff my my allies damage, basically, because it gives them an extra, you know, one or two abilities worth of stamina. So I took the sturdy horn. I had rapid maneuver on for a while to get to that, and I think it's a great ultimate. I just whip out my two-handed sword, pop my war horn. I don't always use my Dragonknight standard because with a boss or something like that, while it's going to do some AoE damage, I can certainly just use my low slash to get them out of there. More for trash pulls, even though it's on my main bar. I do use it more often, so I do keep Dragonknight standard on my main bar. But that's more for trash, because it's going to do lots of damage in an area while they're grouped around me, while my talons have them held in place in my standard, and that's how I burn trash mobs down. So that is that. Those are my skills. Let's quickly jump into the character screen, and right off the bat, you'll see that I'm the hero of Hrothgar. Now, right off the bat, you'll see that every one of my points is in health, and there's a lot of debate going around as to what the best type of build is. Whether it's a magic build to keep up your defensive abilities, whether it's a stamina build to just sit there and hold your block attack. And I find really that when I use my abilities, when I tank, I have plenty of stamina. Not often do I run out of stamina. And if I do, I power attack and get it back because of my werewolf form. And we'll talk about that a little bit as well. But every point I have is into health. You see my max health is 34,317 with my two-handed sword, and then 34,317 with my sword and shield. I usually have a little bit more with the shield. I'm pretty sure I have yeah, I have 2 more minutes on my increased health and stamina buff here that I have, about 4,000 of health and stamina. But I put all my points into health, because the more health I have, just the easier it seems to be, because I can block a lot. I don't really run out of stamina, and I'll demonstrate that when I go into a dungeon. But those are the skills I'm going to be using. That's the things I've been doing. Somebody must have buffed me with that. With lycanthropy, it increases my stamina generation. It's a nice ultimate. It went well. And sometimes I do use it in dungeons, even when I'm tanking. I will pop it to clear out trash mobs, just because you can, because it's nice. And usually the other person I run with, my friend in the guild, he's a berserker werewolf. So when I pop my pack leader, which is the morph that I took, I pop pack leader. Oh, you're down here. We can stay in werewolf form for a while and just burn trash mobs down like crazy. So sometimes I do use werewolf form in dungeons. Anyway, I'm rambling now. Let's cut this segment. I will jump into a dungeon and show you guys how I actually tank, and show you how my playstyle is a bit different than the guides that I've seen, but it tends to work very well, and I think I've become quite accomplished. Toot my own horn there. See you guys in the next part. 1 minute to jump into a dungeon. Hey guys, welcome to the first part of this dungeon. In this one, we are just going to pull a little bit of trash mobs here to give you an idea of what tanking is like when you're fighting trash and you're picking up bigger groups. ESO is not the type of game where you're going to want to run in and taunt everything in the room. Certainly if there are elites or big damage dealers, I look for guys with two-handed swords a lot of the time. Then you want to grab those up. But really, as a tank in ESO, what you're going to be doing is controlling the battlefield when there's lots of groups. So you're going to want to run in, throw maybe a taunt or two down, and then locking them down with my talons is what I'm going to do a lot of the time. You saw there in the beginning when I jumped in, I locked things down with the talons. And then here you saw me just do it there again. So I'm going to be locking things down, doing damage over time to try and control the battlefield. Stay on the healers. I interrupt them if I can. DPS really needs to burn healers down first. Obviously, that's just basic MMO stuff. But locking things down, reducing the damage they're going to do to my allies is really my priority when it comes to big trash pulls. And to do that, you'll see that I've picked up those skills we talked about earlier. The cleave, giving me the damage shield and things like that. For bosses, it's really about staying mobile, and this boss drops pretty quickly. She wasn't much of a challenge, but as you'll see, it's just about paying attention to what she's doing, getting ready to block her attacks. Really what I'm going to do is key off what she does. I don't want to wait for the sparkles, because in a hectic situation like that, it's hard to see them sometimes. So really, as a tank, what you want to do is pick up the ability to know what's going to happen before it happens. I'm not talking about Jedi powers. I'm simply talking about knowing that when the boss brings their mace back like that, like she just did there, she's about to power attack me. Now, I ate that one because I was stunned there. But it's about paying attention to what she's going to do and not relying on those sparkles. When I see her pick up her mace or swing it back behind her, I know she's going to throw a power attack, so I want to preemptively get my block in there and take care of it. Hey guys, so in this part, this is Chokethorn, one of the easier bosses in the game, in my opinion, because she's a stationary boss. Most bosses, when you're running as a tank, it's really all about paying attention to those AoEs. You'll see she throws it down there, but it's, like I said, about preemptively knowing. When she drops into the ground like that, or she makes that type of movement, I know that she's going to throw her AoE right there. As she tunnels down like that, I get an extra attack in on her, and then I roll backwards right away. So it's really about keying in on what the boss is doing, paying attention to the ground, and keeping your debuffs on her at all times. You'll see that I have the damage debuff on her and my taunt ability on her at all times to give my allies more of a chance to do damage and also to take away the pressure from my healer. So it's all about preemptive, preemptive, preemptive. You want to really pay attention. A mobile tank is an alive tank because you really need to be moving at all times. You can't, this isn't a game where you can back things up into corners, and certainly not all games are, but a little less, I think, mechanical-wise, is it about backing things up into corners and locking them down completely. The bosses don't get stunned, the bosses don't get locked, and they don't generally have a patrol range. They just kind of move wherever you move, with the exception of a few teleporters and casting-type bosses. But these guys don't generally move too much, especially not Chokethorn, so it's really about just paying attention to what she's doing and reacting to it so that you don't die in the situation. So Chokethorn drops pretty easily there, but you know I can't stress it enough. I can't say too many times. Be moving, be paying attention to really what's going on around you. This Alit is a prime example. It's either this one or the next one. But I see that he's ready to pounce. It's this next one right down here. I miss the fact that he's charging his power attack, but I see that he's hunched down right about here, and I realize it, and I put my shield up. So it's about knowing what's happening, really paying attention, and that's what I love about ESO, is that you really need to pay attention to what's going on to react to the situation. It doesn't become, you know, a button rotation with your tank. Certainly there are moves you need to use and keep up, but it doesn't become just a set rotation that you're just pressing buttons and it gets boring. In this final clip, this is the final boss of the dungeon, and she goes down pretty quickly, so I don't have very much time to explain. However, she is going to put down an AoE that you need to watch out for, and this mechanic only is the fact that if you get caught in it, it's going to do big damage. She uses it pretty quickly early on in the fight, right about here, and those hands come up and those skeletons come up, and that's really, really cool. But you want to pop out of that as quick as you can. Watch out for her AoEs, and like I said, she goes down fairly quickly. The boss is not terribly hard. This is a normal dungeon that I'm running just for the sake of being able to record rather quickly. But, you know, it's just about paying attention. It's reacting. It's about practice. You can't jump into a dungeon and immediately do a lot of good and a lot of really impressive things with your group. It's about playing off of your group, knowing what they're capable of, and really just having experience up under your belt to really know what to do. So she dropped pretty quickly there. It's just all about practice, practice, practice. The more dungeons you run, don't be afraid of going into a dungeon and having people say, "Oh, you don't know what you're doing. You need to watch videos on the entire thing and study it before you do it." That's not the way. The best way to learn is to do it, to experience it, to learn what works as a tank and what doesn't. You're going to die, you're going to fail, you're going to have your healer mess up, you're going to mess up, and your crew might give you a little bit of crap for it, but be nice back to them, you know, just say, "Hey, sorry, I'm learning to tank. What should I have done there? Can you help me out?" And if people are kind, which me and my friends are, if you run into a group with us, we're certainly going to help you out, and I'm certainly not going to kick you right away, unless you're just doing something stupid, blatantly obvious to troll. But if you need help, if you ask, you know, there's certainly text chat now, and even in voice chat. Me and my friends I know would be glad to help you out as long as you're not being a douche. So experience that. Live and learn, die and practice your tanking, and I promise it'll be rewarding. I really like tanking in this game. I think it includes a lot of really fun things, a lot of really fun mechanics, and paying attention. It always keeps you on your toes, and I really, really like it a lot. Anyway, guys, I'm rambling on. I don't want to take up too much of your time, but thank you for watching. Hopefully those just little bit of tips helped you out if you're thinking about rolling a tank, or maybe if you have one and you just needed a little bit of a guide. I call this a guide, but it's more of, hey, here's a few tips of things that I do. My build, my playstyle is a little bit different than a lot of them that I've seen out there. I know a lot of guys are so set on stamina tanks, but I just play it this way, and I have a lot of fun doing it, and it works, so I continue to. Look forward to a couple more ESO videos coming. I do have a healer that I'm trying to level up, so I can give you guys a few guides on that. That's my Favorite thing? It's kind of close between healer and tank. I like them both, but look forward to that. Thank you so much for watching. Thanks for stopping by. Hopefully that helped you in some way, and I will see you in the next video. Finn. Thanks again, guys, so much for stopping by and watching the video. I know it's not the most professionally made video, but hopefully it helped you out in some way. Putting a shameless plug in here at the end of the video for the Witch Breed. That's our new guild that we've got up and running. If you're interested in just having a place to call home, a place to hang out with some cool people, send me a PM on the PlayStation Network and I will throw you an invite. We'd love to have you. Until then, enjoy the rest of the music and this weird clip of PvPing the other day on my healer. Somehow that guy was in werewolf form the entire time. I'm not sure how it happened, but I looked it up online and there's a lot of weird glitches that can happen with that. So have a good laugh and enjoy this clip. Thanks again, guys. See you later.